founder and CEO of Theo Chocolate. Before founding Theo, Joe spent many years working on sustainable agriculture and agroforestry in the tropics of Africa and Central America. In 1994, Joe pioneered the organic cocoa and chocolate market in the U.S. as a solution to environmental degradation and economic adversity he witnessed in the areas where he worked. A little over a decade later, Joe opened Theo Chocolate, marrying his passion for cacao with his desire to foster fair trade. So please join me in giving him a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thanks very much. How's it sound? Is that okay? Is it okay? And so I did bring chocolate, and so this morning at the last minute, I completely decided to do a different presentation than I was going to do. And so that means whenever there's a pause and it feels a little uncomfortable, I'm going to start throwing chocolate bars at you. I actually really like dialogue much more than just sort of talking to you. I'm going to tell you the story of Theo Chocolate, and I'll tell you my story. But I'm hoping that we can have a little bit more of a conversation either through Q&A or comments that you have. So how many people here have heard of Theo Chocolate before? And who has not? Okay, that's great. So Theo Chocolate is, as Anna was mentioning, we're the first and only, as far as I know right now, organic and fair trade chocolate maker in the U.S. There's about a dozen companies in the whole country actually making chocolate from cocoa beans to finished product. And most of them are huge, ADM, Cargill, Hershey, Mars, etc. And so we're trying to change the way the chocolate industry operates. And I'm not sure if you're tracking what's going on in the Ivory Coast right now or not. But Ivory Coast is the world's largest supplier of cocoa beans. They produce almost a third of the world's supply. And last fall, there was an election where the President Gbagbo was sort of, well, he wasn't elected by the people, and the guy who won the election said, okay, I'm ready to take over, and Gbagbo decided, well, you know what we're really going to do is I'm just going to sign in as president. I'm just going to run the country the way it has been, which was really a setup for conflict. And this conflict is kind of coming to a head right now, and I'm looking at the news twice a day at this point to sort of see what's happening, because we think that he's going to be on his way out any minute if he's not right now. But what was interesting about that is that for the first time, the cocoa supply stopped flowing out of Ivory Coast. Almost 10 years ago, there was a civil conflict. And in West Africa, and many of you may be familiar with this part of the world, there's usually sort of a north and south difference. There's usually in West Africa, Christian south, Muslim north. There's different tribal factions. There's different cultures, and oftentimes there's a north and south conflict. And this started to flare up about 10 years ago. But the cocoa kept flowing, and that's the lifeblood. That's the number one largest export out of Ivory Coast. The cocoa kept flowing. The average farmer there earns less than $1 a day for their entire family, and it's pretty impressive what's actually going on. So people were asking me a couple months ago, hey, so what do you think is going to happen with all this conflict in West Africa? Will the cocoa be shipping? I said, oh yeah, it's going to ship. It doesn't stop. It's a lifeblood. Well, it stopped. I was wrong. And what was interesting was that the industry stepped up and said, you know what? We are not going to pay the tax. The reason it stopped is because Gbagbo needed more money, so he put tax on the cocoa. The industry said, we're not going to pay this tax, and as a result, the cocoa stopped. We're not going to pay this guy. Well, the cocoa prices started to go up. The industry wanted to see some change. And I guess it was about a week ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, Noble Cocoa, which is one of the larger traders, said, you know what? I think we're going to pay the tax. By the end of the month, if Gbagbo's still there, we're going to pay the tax so the cocoa can flow. And I think that signal is kind of indicative of some of the challenges within the industry, because the industry at some level will only take responsibility for their actions to a point. If it's really going to hurt business, if it's really going to hurt profit, then they'll pay the tax to the guy who's been murdering folks in the streets. And so that's kind of a very dramatic way to open up this talk, but that's at the heart of some of the challenge and why I think business needs to be done differently, because as much as we like to push change at the development end, really pulling it through on this side is one of the important components, I think, to a successful strategy. So Theo, we're bean to bar. We start from the cocoa bean and go all the way through, And the reason that we do that is because we want to have control of the supply chain as much as we can, so we can be transparent, have integrity, make a difference. And we also want to make products that we love and that we think consumers will love. And we want to have the ability to tell our story. We want to control the brand and the message. So I'm not sure what's going to come next on the slide, but so this is kind of what we're trying to do, because if we can have a sourcing strategy that actually is respectful of the environment and embraces the needs that the farmers have to get a good value for the crop, we make a product that people want, and people are loving and willing to pay for it, then we have an opportunity to really impact change. And so the branding strategy is about authenticity. We're trying to be authentic and completely transparent. This is our beautiful factory right across the canal. We give tours 7 days a week, and the reason that we do that is that we want to educate people about chocolate and about the work that we do so that they can make informed choices. We bring over 35,000 people through on paid tours each year, and that's growing. These are some cocoa beans. The reason that understanding how the chocolate is made is important is because as consumers, if we know where our product comes from and we know what goes into actually making it, then the perceived value of that product is higher. We understand the story, there's a connection. It's no longer this fungible commodity. So in the factory, and these are just some beautiful pictures, in the factory, everyone gets to see exactly how the product is made. And by opening that up and being able to share the manufacturing story, we're also talking about the sources and how our manufacturing is impacted by what the farmer produces. We're using fresh ingredients from Western Washington, but our cocoa right now is sourced from Africa and Latin America. And we work hard to make sure that not only are we selling bars nationally, we're in all 50 states. Right now we're the number 6 bestseller nationally in our category. But we also do fine chocolate to make sure that the art of chocolate is demonstrated in our products, which elevates the overall brand and the experience consumers have of our products. So this gives you a sense that we make product, that we care about where it comes from. We have a model that isn't particularly that new, right? We've heard about farmers and coffee farmers for a very long, long time. But really, what was it for me or the thing for me that sparked the interest that I had in chocolate was, and I'll show you a quick picture. I think it's the next one. The story I'm going to tell is about my first experience on a cocoa farm, but the first time I really fell in love with chocolate. I think, does anybody remember like ding dongs? Right, yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's what that was, and I was... And to me, chocolate was this thing that is it was this sweet brown Halloween candy that I stole from my brother. I would raid when he was asleep, I would raid his Halloween candy in the middle of the night, because I eat all the chocolate candy first, and I knew he had some because he was really good at it, at saving it. But that's what I thought it was. That's chocolate. Chocolate came from cows in Switzerland. I mean, I had no idea where chocolate grew, how it was made, who made it. I knew where coffee came from. I mean, if you had a mustache and a burrow and a blanket, right? I mean, Juan Valdez, was a face of coffee. That's where coffee came from. And you were in business. That's if I got old enough and could start to shave, maybe I could grow coffee too. But cocoa, we just don't know. We don't have that connection. We're not sure who grows it, where it comes from. And there's a distinct effort to make sure that it is truly a fungible commodity. Because if it's nameless and faceless, it doesn't have any value. And businesses are very, very good at making products that people want at a certain price while generating a profit, right? That's sort of the heart of business. The problem is that in the case of chocolate, when we buy cheap chocolate, and this is true for a lot of products, when we're buying cheap food, there's a real cost for that. And the companies selling the food, distributing the food, making it or processing it, will make a profit, and they're adding value, and they're keeping some of the value. But the raw materials are relegated to this commodity status, and that nameless, faceless, fungible commodity only has value that are oftentimes based on things that have nothing to do with supply and demand. In the case of cocoa, one of the biggest challenges that we've seen over the past several years is speculation just on the commodity pricing. And this speculation is driving prices up and down, but the farmers don't necessarily get that benefit. So when I first stepped foot on a cocoa farm, this is as much as I knew and cared to know about chocolate. It was this beautiful, wonderful thing that I just enjoyed, and I think I was having some sort of insulin rush at that moment. But it's really this beautiful plant. This is a small cocoa flower, and I'll show you a few more pictures in a minute. But I was actually sailing in Central America with a friend of mine, having an adventure. I was 20 years old and had this beat-up old boat that didn't have any electronics or a motor, and we had a great time. But after a while, I realized that I wanted to do something meaningful with my life, so I volunteered for the Small Conservation Foundation, and they were working with, it was a tropical conservation foundation, this is in southern Belize, and they were working with cocoa farmers, mine cocoa farmers, to understand how the farmers are impacting their environment in beneficial ways, as well as going into the rainforest to collect germplasm and cuttings to protect plants that were these very special, rare plants that were endangered by logging. So I had my eyes opened through this experience, but my very first day, I didn't graduate high school, I didn't go to college. I showed up and I had a strong back, and they said, well, would you take this rice sack that had these shoulder straps made out of old car seatbelts and a shotgun and go with these guys and help them harvest cocoa? And I thought, well, and some of you might have heard this story, I've told it a few times. But I had the bag and the gun, and I thought, well, I didn't know where cocoa came from or how it grew. I thought, do you shoot it? I mean, why do I have this shot? So off I go, and my job was, and I think the next, so cocoa, and these are cocoa pods. So from that little flower, there are these beautiful pods, and to me, I sort of describe them as a cross between a football and a pumpkin. And inside are seeds that are fermented and dried that we make chocolate out of. So my job was the farmers were cutting the pods off the trees, and my job was to gather these pods up. And it was pretty hilly where we were, and so I was chasing these pods all over the place. And I went to reach between these bushes and to grab a pod, and there was this huge snake that went right by where my hand was. And I was a curious guy, and I had this little notepad, stuck in my belt, and I whipped it out and asked Chapin, the guy who was running the crew. I said, hey, Chapin, what kind of snake is that? And he just said, get the gun, boy, get the gun. And then I knew what the gun was for. And it was a fer-de-lance, or a yellow jaw, which is one of the most dangerous snakes in Central America. And the reason that they're so dangerous is because they're territorial, they hunt in pairs, and they're very aggressive. There's a lot of poisonous snakes, but they don't want anything to do with you. They want as much to do with you as you do with them. This snake, however, is a little bit different. So the farmers, this is where they have to work every day, so we went snake hunting, and it took a few hours, and we finally tracked the snake down and it met its maker. And we went back to collecting cocoa pods, and it was like this adventure. I was a 20-year-old kid. I'm like, oh my God, this is chocolate. I'll go back to and this is every day. And you go back to that picture of me, sitting there in front of the TV eating a ding dong. But this is really what's going on with chocolate. This is where it's coming from, and it's this beautiful tree. And so the day progressed. And when you crack open the pods, after I had sort of gathered this huge giant pile of pods, we went to sit down to crack the pods open and scoop out these seeds and put them in the rice bag and carry them back to the village. These are seeds inside. They're about the size of almonds, and they're covered with this mucilage, this white pulp. It's delicious. And so we're sitting there cracking them open, scooping the seeds out, putting them in our rice sack. Excuse me. And the farmers were sucking on the seeds. Has anybody been to a cocoa farm? Right? Have you tasted the mucilage, the pulp? Isn't it delicious? I think it's delicious. And I had never tasted anything like it. It's like this. It's sweet and like honey and passion fruit and a little bit sour, and it's delicious. And the thing is, as soon as you open this pod, it oxidizes and starts to break down really fast. Because my first thought, and everybody's first thought when they try it, is, I've never had anything like this. How do I get that and take it home with me and have it later, or share it with my friends? You can't, because as soon as you open the pod, it really starts to break down pretty fast. But it's an important part of the product, because the sugar in there, as it ferments, breaks down and ferments, it's important for quality. So all of this, just having my mind blown. And here we are, and there were high canopies and howler monkeys and these giant buttress trees that look like something out of Dr. Seuss, and snake hunting, and this is chocolate. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is really something else. And at that moment, I realized that this was such a special food and such a special experience that nobody has any idea. You know, we just take it for granted. It's supposed to be cheap and sweet and brown, and away you go. So, so I'm going to talk a little bit how chocolate's made. But after doing this for a while and spending a bunch of time as a good, strong back in Central America, I saw that social and environmental degradation were really business problems. You know, the problem that I saw, and this is over a few years, you know, I saw the first electric line go into some of the villages, and you know, the first refrigerator coming in, and then a TV, and suddenly there's electric bills, and environmental or land stewardship decisions were being made based on the need for cash fast. And so the decision process was poor. It wasn't, the farmers stopped thinking about the long-term potential of their farms or the region. It was more about how do we grow some more rice, because that was one of the only cash markets available for their crops. And how do we grow more of that and cut down more trees and grow rice and sell it so we can pay the electric bill? It seemed to me, and it was pretty naive, and this is in the early 90s, that if there was a market for crops that they produced that had value, and they were able to get money for those crops like cocoa, which is a tree crop, which is great for creating habitat, then everything would be okay. It seemed really simple to me. And so I started looking around and saw that, and I was eating organic food at the time, and the organic food industry, the entire organic food industry in the United States was $1 billion. And I was like, this is amazing, $1 billion, this is so much. Of course everybody wants organic chocolate. I had no idea that this was barely measurable, that this whole industry was so nascent. But it was enough for me to go home, and I wrote a letter to all of the chocolate makers in the United States and said, hey, guys, I have organic cocoa beans, I know I can get them certified, and I really think that you should buy them because everybody's going to want to buy an organic chocolate bar. One company wrote back, and it was a company that's no longer with us, and they said, they were actually in bankruptcy at the time. They said, hey, we'd love to talk to you. Come on down to New York, and we'll see what we can do. So I went down. They said, you know what? If you can bring us cocoa beans and sugar and milk powder, all organic, and by the way, bring us customers, we'd be happy to make organic chocolate for you. And I thought, well, if that's all I have to do, that's fine. And I just wanted to hang out with the farmers and do what I was doing. I said, well, that's great. I can do that. So I did. And we started making organic chocolate and in the United States, and brought in the first organic cocoa beans from Costa Rica, actually, in 1994 in July. And away we went. And what I saw, though, was there was this downward pressure in the industry on price, and that if I really wanted to have a big impact, I needed to do what I told you earlier, which was control the supply chain, control the product and the brand. Anyway, so that was sort of my own story coming into all of this. I'm going to talk a little bit how cocoa's made. But are there any questions yet? And are you ready for some chocolate? Yeah.
I have one question. What about organic cocoa beans?
Yes.
Vis-a-vis what? Because cocoa pods all grow on the tree. So
Yes.
I mean, where's the inorganic or the other stuff coming from?
So the question is it, you know, they're all organic, right? And so a lot of cocoa is organic by default. Some of it's not. So if you start spraying herbicides, fungicides are a big problem, start pesticides, then you lose the organic integrity. And so if it's certified organic, that means we have a third party verifying that they're grown without those chemicals and grown in a way that's beneficial for the environment.
So the farmers in these countries like Belize and Cote d'Ivoire, they also are starting to use the herbicides and all the pesticides and all that side stuff.
Right.
To increase their yields.
In some cases, yes. In many cases, no. A lot of farmers can't afford it. So the cocoa.
I would think, gosh, doesn't it increase their costs? Because if it's just growing in nature as a natural resource to them,
Right.
wouldn't we just take care of that process?
The certification, organic certification is beneficial because it gives consumers confidence that a third party has verified that it is produced in a way that's beneficial for the environment. You could be growing it organic and it's an organic crop, but if you're not certified, then the consumer at the shelf doesn't have the visibility on that. So that's why the third-party certification is important to us. Because there are some cocoa farmers who do a beautiful job who aren't certified. There are many who could never be certified because they don't have a market. But does that answer your question? Okay.
Can you be organic if you kill snakes?
Yes, and well, see, here's the thing about the organic industry is that we don't like having bugs in our food. We're not interested in having bugs in our food. So it's not about whether you kill the bug or not, it's how you do it. So think about that. All right, so let's see, who's dark chocolate? I might need some help, so I'm not sure if anybody wants to come up and help me or not. But I have, this is bread and chocolate. Have you tried the bread and chocolate?
Bread and chocolate?
Yeah, that'd be great. And this is hazelnut crunch. And that's all milk chocolate. So milk chocolate box, dark chocolate. Yes. You can. I have 300 chocolate bars, so have at it.
Oh, this one's big and almond.
Yeah, so there's a question, is there pressure from the big chemical companies to go into cocoa areas? And the answer is not so much. And part of the reason is that the crop has so little value that the farmers can't afford the products that the chemical companies would like to sell. Right, they're not yet. Yes? The question is third-party certification for organic, and I'll talk a little bit about fair trade, expensive? It can be expensive, but it's actually just the cost of the product. So in our case, we'll have, if the farmer group needs financing to pay for it, or we'll pay for the certification, but all of that rolls into the cost of goods that we're selling. So it's not, you'll hear complaints, well, it's so expensive, it's too expensive. It's not, because it gets folded into the cost, and consumers typically are willing to pay a little bit more for organic or fair trade products. So, yes.
Yeah, dark.
What do you got there?
I'll try one of those.
So the question is, what are the barriers in finding new sources, and how does the timing of certification play in? I'll give you an example. We have, there's a group in Bolivia who we're talking with right now who's producing amazing quality. It's absolutely delicious. They're certified organic, but not fair trade. And so we've said, hey, we're willing to buy your cocoa if it's organic and fair trade certified. So if the co-op makes a commitment to certification, we'll write a contract. And so they did. They said, fine, we're committed, and we negotiated a good price, and we're contracting for the cocoa. So it comes down to the willingness of the cooperative or the supplier to be certified, and that has an impact on the value to us. So let me talk a little bit about how cocoa is produced quickly. So this is the beans after they're scooped out of the pods. We talked about that. They go into boxes. They're fermented, and then they are dried, sun-dried ideally, and they come to us in that dry form. If you come to the factory and do the tour, has anybody done the tour? Oh, thank you for saying that. So come do the tour. We would love to show you how all this is done, and you'll see and get to play with cocoa beans if you'd like. I wanted to talk just briefly about, from the farmer's perspective, and the difference between short-term view and long-term view from a landscape stewardship perspective. It's a mouthful. So this is a cocoa farm, and this is actually this is one of my favorite cocoa farms. And you can see here, it looks like a great forest. I'm sure there's snakes there, but down here there's a cocoa pod there. And the reason that this farm was so special to me is because cocoa biologically is an understory crop in the rainforest. And so a lot of times you'll see cocoa monocropped, especially in West Africa, and it likes shade, so the farmers will let the tops of the trees sort of get leggy to provide shade for the branches underneath. But there's no big trees, and there's no large canopy, and governments actually are incented by the timber trade not to allow large trees to grow. And one example in Ghana, I was going to go see a farmer, and so much of Ghana has been deforested. I mean, it's really sad, it's happened at a pretty quick clip. And we were driving down the road and saw this huge giant tree, and it's this beautiful tree, and I was excited. I was like, wow, that's the first big tree I had seen in a few hours. And as we got closer to where the farmer was, it was clear that that tree was on his land, and we saw his wife and said, we're looking for her husband. And he said, oh, well, he's out by the big tree. So we went out there. He was building a fire around the tree. And we said, what are you doing? And he said, well, it's big enough now I have to kill it, because if the government truck drives by and sees it, then they will come take the tree out. But to get to the tree, they're going to kill 2 acres of my cocoa, which I need the money for. So I'm going to get to it before they do, so they don't. And he won't get paid for the cocoa that they, take out to get to the big tree. Which this is just, I just couldn't believe this. So I was with a colleague, a friend of mine, who is a hardcore environmentalist, and I mean, this guy's like really, Bob is pretty serious. And so we went to the Cocoa Bod, which is a marketing board for all of the cocoa in Ghana comes through one organization. And we're meeting in this paneled room, like dark mahogany and these dark red velvet chairs. And we're meeting with the gentleman who handles all the contracts. And only very few companies get to export. And we're kind of asking to sign up to export cocoa out of Ghana. And I'm sitting there with Bob, and this giant man with a very deep voice, and he says, so, how can I help you, young men? And I said, well, we'd like to buy some cocoa, and we'd like to sign up as a legal exporter in Ghana. And so we're having a nice conversation, and Bob says, but there's one problem. You guys have this policy about taking out the big trees. I'm paraphrasing here. You're taking out the big trees, and we really think that that's completely against what we're trying to do as a business, and we really think that you need to address this. And the gentleman we're meeting with, nodding his head. He says, well, I'd be happy to speak to my brother-in-law, who's in charge of all the logging concessions in the country, to see what he has to say. We didn't get a contract. So there's sort of this institutional kind of approach to environmental stewardship that has more to do with extracting natural resources with a very, very narrow view. And frankly, what's happening in Ghana and part of West Africa is that the Sahara is coming south because there's forests. You need forests for rain. You know the story. So this is in Panama. So the thing that I love about this cocoa farm, we're meeting with the farmer and talking about some of these trees that are actually pretty young but tall. And say, well, what's your plan, and what are you doing with those trees? And he said, well, I've planted those 10 years ago. And he said, those are my kids' college education. This is his fund. He looks at his landscape from an economically diverse perspective. So like stocks, right? If you're all in one stock and that company goes south, you're in trouble. The landscape for farmers in developing countries is very much the same, where this is really where most of their money's coming from. So the cocoa is important because they can have an immediate cash crop for it. He's growing larger timber trees that he can selectively harvest in the future for a good income. They provide shade that the cocoa needs. He's generating habitat, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a long-term view. He has the ability to do this because he's part of a cooperative in Panama that we've been working with. I have been for 15 years, and they've been making good money in cocoa. They have good quality. They are selling into the European market as well as into the U.S., and he's, as a result, has been able to invest in his family and his future, and it shows here. And that's what we're going for, and that's what we believe is the potential, or one of the potentials for chocolate.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think educated in understanding. So why don't they want private land or private farmers that have tall trees?
They don't. The tall trees are owned by the government because the government sells them for money.
Anywhere. I mean,
Right. Yeah. The question is, what's the seasonality of cocoa? Typically, cocoa has 2 crops, a major crop and a minor crop. So it takes about almost 6 months for that pod to mature. And so But there's a major crop and a minor crop, and it is growing all year long. Yes?
Have you seen any movement from any of the large chocolate companies to embrace any of this more sustainable growing and purchasing? Or most of them purchasing from these monocrop farms where there's some of that?
Well, so the question is, have I seen any movement from the larger companies? And definitely, the larger companies are hip to this. They're more hip to or aware of the consumer demands, and they're not really, in my opinion, going at the issue head on. So I was there's an organization called the World Cocoa Foundation. The World Cocoa Foundation was set up about 10 or 12 years ago by the large manufacturers. And at the time when they first started, I was asked to be on the board, and I was their token tree hugger, right? It was nice to have an organic guy on the board. And so in 2001 was when the BBC did their expose on slavery on cocoa farms. And when this news hit, it was a really big deal. It's a rampant problem. I mean, not only does the average cocoa farm, even now, earn less than $1 a day for their entire family, in large parts of West Africa, young boys are enslaved to help harvest cocoa because they really can't afford to pay people to harvest the cocoa. And the problem continues to this day. Correct. And there's no other markets, and they've invested in this cocoa. Yeah.
It seems like the kind of business you're running is really in social and economic structures that don't necessarily support what you're doing. And so, have you seen attempts at larger structural change to deal with issues of inequality, with issues of what's happening within the production?
I guess I don't understand your question. Have I seen larger changes in the...
Attempts at structural change, so at working with larger structures such as government, such as...
Mm-hmm. Yes. I have not seen a lot myself. There may be things going on that I'm not aware of, but what I've seen, there hasn't been a fundamental change. And so this kind of goes back to this question, which, the industry is now understands certification, they understand the problems, but they're not dealing with the heart of the issue. When the news of the slavery problem first broke, there was this emergency meeting down in Washington of the board of the Cocoa Foundation. Of course, I ran down there very excited because we're going to create change. And we sat there in the room, and the chairman of the board was Marty Andreas. The Andreas family is a major stockholder in ADM, and ADM's the world's first or second largest cocoa bean trader and chocolate maker, believe it or not. And he came from the corn industry, and corn and soybeans, didn't really know chocolate. And he sat there, and we're watching the video that the BBC did, and it's really awful. And he says, in a very grandfather way, he says, well, I just don't know why don't we just pay them more? And which makes sense, right? And the rest of the industry started spinning it because there's not enough courage in the industry to make that fundamental change of how is the structure of the market established, or how is it that can be established so that there's more security in supply. Because in commodity markets like that, it really comes down to who's willing to sell at a lower price. Do you know the story of Vietnam and coffee in the late 90s? And so, Vietnam came on heavy in the late 90s, dumped a whole bunch of product on the market. They were very industrious. The coffee price plunged. And, coffee farmers for a number of years were really in a world of hurt as a result. And so it is about the structural change that we're trying to promote, and we're a tiny, tiny little company in comparison. The structural change that we're trying to input is that you have to have that direct relationship. You have to be building something of value. So value for us, and it'll tie into this picture in just a second, value comes down to making sure that the producers have the technology that they need to produce a product that has a higher sort of organoleptic value. It tastes better, smells better, so we can make a product that people are willing to spend more money for because they enjoy it more. And that's part of what we'd like to see happen.
Well, and
Yeah, go for it.
and I think that's what it comes down to. I think not just your industry, my industry, and just about anyone that's going to look at it, and they touched on it briefly in there, it really is consumer driven.
Yes.
And I mean, and that's what it comes down to. Everybody can talk a good game and say, I'm green this, I'm that, whatever, but it's when they pull their money out, what they're willing to pay for.
Yeah.
And to kind of give you a parallel, for my particular industry.
What's your industry?
I own a cleaning company.
Right on.
We're out of Oklahoma City, actually. And what happened in the cleaning industry is, let's say we're 20 years ago, and 5 companies go to bid on this building to provide cleaning services. Well, company A gets it. And company A got it because the consumer, the building owner, went with the low dollar. He showed what was important to him was how can I get the cheapest service, not the best service, not the company that treats their employees the best, anything like that, but what affects my bottom line. So those same, let's say this same 5 companies, they go to bid on the next building. Well, companies, B, C, D, and E, they remember the last time company A got it, and they got it because they were down here. So one of the other companies jumped ships and said, well, I'm going to go down there with that guy so I can try to match what he's doing. Maybe I can get the contract. And what happens is eventually everybody's down there and they're producing that level. Well, we all have cost involved. Cost of supplies, chemicals, labor, and all that. And in my industry in particular, it's very labor intensive. So where do those companies, if I'm only getting X number of dollars, I still have to make a profit. So where do I make those cuts? The first thing I do is I cut labor. I start paying labor. Now, thankfully, here in the United States, we have minimum wage laws, even though a lot of those get violated all the time on undertable stuff with laborers from down south and that kind of thing. So, in my particular industry. So, as the employer, to compete with the consumers that I have to sell to, which are the building owners, if I have to drive my price down here because that's what they're paying, then I have to make cuts. And you have to start making those cuts on the benefits you provide for. And the problem is the consumer buying my product. Here's what I see. Okay, and I think this just spread. You probably see the same thing. Is the consumer thinks, I don't want to look at how they're running their operation. I just want to see what their price they're charging. Now, and then they think they hire this company that's paying the minimum wage, no insurance, all that kind of stuff. Well, that's not me doing it. Like, I'm the consumer company. That's how they operate their business. I've just asked them to provide this list of specs, and this is the price they're saying they can do it at. And so I just think that at the end of the day, and you said they're not getting to the core of the problem, I think the core of all of these issues is consumer driven.
And so did everybody hear that? Okay, so that was, because from my perspective, that's sort of the punchline for this whole chat, is that it's consumer driven and the consumers are where the change needs to take place. And I'm going to sort of leap ahead and then come back because I think that's absolutely correct. I had lunch, there were a few of us that had lunch with Raj Shaw, who's the administrator for USAID, and I said, hey, I got this crazy idea. Why don't you take half of your budget that goes into development efforts, take half of it, and start educating consumers in the developed world, about what ethical products really are. Let's engage consumers in a way where they can actually make a difference. Because I guarantee you, if consumers start paying a better price, or if there's products that have value that consumers are willing to pay a little bit more for, and the farmers are able to earn more, or the textile producers, or whatever that the beginning of the chain is, if they're able to earn more, I guarantee you that the investment will show up in a heartbeat. Right now it's so much development money and I've seen a lot in Africa and Latin America with agriculture, with cocoa specifically, with all kinds of schemes. Cocoa used as a replacement crop for cocaine production. Cocoa used as a replacement for the timber industry that's dying. Cocoa trying to jumpstart an economy. And organic cocoa farmers in Tanzania, we have a project there, and we're not buying there yet, but organic cocoa farmers there are earning $500 a year for their entire family. That's it. And they're selling to organic product companies. And why is that? Those same organic companies have the same supply issues, and they have this, and the consumers have the same, sort of lack of visibility as conventional products. It's the same conventional model being applied to something that is a little bit greener, there's no doubt. It is certified. But it's not fundamentally changing the game for the producer. And I think that if consumers are aware and there's companies with integrity, that's where the change takes place. So I actually really want to talk to you guys about that.
You speak about a little bit the pricing and the value chain.
Yes.
Okay, if I don't know what your price
Well, not in our case, but a
But
conventional
that
cocoa
is-
farmer is
yeah.
earning $1 a day.
I guess my question is the value being pushed down the chain such that to the extent you get a better price at the retail level,
Yeah.
that the farmer who produced it and had it certified is getting better than what the farmer who doesn't have that organic certification is getting? Or where does that value price point hit the value chain? Who's getting that? I mean, you're getting it at the retail level, but who else downstream is getting it?
Well, the farmers are. I mean, absolutely. We had, so when we started up Theo, we were paying $4,000 or $5,000 a ton for cocoa at a time when it was trading for $1,600. And so that's directly to farmers. That's not to traders. And so I'm going to give you an example. And this is such a good question. I have a chart not here, but I'll walk you through the how this works. A cocoa farmer let's use East Africa as an example, because this is a place we're spending a lot of time right now. In East Africa, cocoa farmers will sell to a middleman. That middleman will sell to a trader. A trader will sell to an exporter, so we're now 3. That's before it leaves the country. That exporter will sell to another trader, who then will either sell to a manufacturer or another trader, potentially, who then will produce a product for the retail or for the brand or the manufacturer. So you're sort of at, it's somewhere around 7, 8 links, and everybody in that link is taking a margin out of it all the way through. And so if the world price is $2,000 a ton, right now it's a little over $3,000. You can sort of imagine how much is actually taken out before the farmer gets it. What we're doing is we're actually leapfrogging that and saying, and what we look for is we want to see the farmers getting as close to somewhere between 75 and 90% of the export price, that FOB price at the dock when exports. That's what we're going for. And every country has it. Then one of the other problems with this, if you're buying cocoa in Costa Rica, the per capita percentage of GDP in Costa Rica is somewhere around $13,000. For those of you who are smarter than I, if you have the real numbers, tell me. But the last we looked, that's what I saw. In Tanzania, it's $1,300. So when we buy cocoa for $4,000 or $5,000 a ton, we're changing the game for farmers in Tanzania. In Costa Rica, it's not so much. So you have this other challenge of which part of the world is really benefiting from that chocolate bar purchase, if that makes any sense. Are you guys okay with this? Is this all right? Go for it.
Well, and to kind of speak to what she's saying, or what her question was, and I don't know your business at all, but I was just thinking as she was asking that, the next thing as the consumer is there's all kinds of regulatory committees out there for a variety of industries. There's that in my industry as well. But the thing that you got to watch is that just because somebody has an organic product, it doesn't necessarily mean that all that money is funneling down to the end farmer, which
That's
is
right.
what you were concerned about. That gets into where you have to know, and with your company, and that's why he's controlling, I'm assuming that's why you're controlling the supply chain all the way down, is because if you have 8 links in there, if you don't have control over all those 8 links, who knows if it stops right here? Or stops right there.
Right. And this is, yes, go ahead.
Does the fair trade certification help that though? I mean, can we trust that if something is fair trade certified, that it does make it down the supply chain far enough to actually benefit farmers?
No. And that's the truth. Fair trade is good for consumer education. It does not guarantee that farmers are okay. The way that I look at it, and the reason that we do it, is because it's the best thing that's out there right now. But if a cocoa farmer has a marathon to run before they are economically, viable, okay. Fair trade is one step. It's not the first mile. It's not the first quarter mile. It's one step off the start line. So it's better than nothing, but it does not guarantee that everything's all right. What it means is that there is no slave labor, which is good. It does mean kids have access to education and that they're not engaged in harmful work. And it does ensure that there is a premium that is paid for that crop that goes to the co-op or the farm organization to be used for social benefit, so for education, healthcare, credits. So it's good, right? It's better than nothing, but it does not substantially change the game for the farmers. That's just the truth. There is nothing out there and this is, and believe me, there's so many fair trade people who would just love to shoot me right now, but it's the truth. Yeah. We have, and that's a fair trade certification, but it's still the same. The reality is the same there. So Fair for Life, which is a fair trade certification, the benefit there is that it certifies our own operation, that we treat our workers in our own operation in a certain way, as well as relying on certification, the fair trade certification for farmers, but it's only guaranteeing that minimum standard that I just shared with you. It does. We're moving, right? So we're trying to move this thing. I mean, I feel really good about what we're paying cocoa farmers, and I know that I feel really good about it. I know that we can do more, and the more we understand, the more we'll do. And if you're interested, I can talk about our whole Congo and Tanzania strategy, which is sort of core of this. But so I feel good about what we do, but that's because of our direct relationships. Not all, and if you're interested, I do have a slide that shows some of our competitors. And it's crass to show it, but I can sort of give you an idea of why this is such a complicated thing. 1 second, yes.
Yes, I'd be interested to know your thoughts if the entire industry, either by regulation or by self-imposed control, said, all chocolate all over the world, we're going to source organically fair trade. What would happen the next day?
In the industry? Well, that's a good question. I think the effect would be that you would see a substantially higher cost for the products that you buy, or less cocoa in the products that you buy.
And I don't think self-imposed would ever work.
Well, there's
Even if there's a government regulation, there has to be a volition on the part of the industry participants that they're going to follow that, because there are lots of ways of avoiding. If you just if the government says, here's the box you have to check, guess what? People will check that box. But what I'm wondering is, what would be the impact on the ground if everybody said, I want fair trade? The reason I ask this is from the Starbucks coffee side of things, shareholders have said, well, why don't we have all of Starbucks fair trade, all of Starbucks be organic? And they said, well, that's great, but we buy this much, and the production that you're talking about is this much.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and I know Starbucks and their supply chain pretty well. They have a thing called cafe practices, and if you're familiar with that, it is so much better than fair trade. It's not even funny. Starbucks as a company, and this is, as a company and I'm not sure if it's true today, but up until a year ago or so it was true, their cafe practices is so much more powerful from a farmer health standpoint than fair trade or organic. But they didn't talk about it. They haven't sorted out how to lead with this. We created, based on that, we did a joint project with Starbucks about 5 years ago, creating cocoa practices along this line. They've implemented cocoa practices, which is this very comprehensive set of standards for social, economic, and environmental sustainability. And the problem is, since they have to go through a third party, like these large chocolate makers I was telling you about, they can't figure out how to get a premium to the farmer. So they're sort of in this cycle where you look at certain indicators and they're doing okay in certain indicators, but economically they're still falling sideways. So to go back, what would happen? There would be less cocoa in your M&Ms or your Hershey bars, or you'd be paying a lot more. And what the industry is doing now is that they've engaged Rainforest Alliance to certify wide swaths in West Africa, Rainforest Alliance, which I think is should demonstrate their awareness, but they're not contemplating a price change. And I promise you, without a price change in the price that you pay, you cannot somehow magically grow more money that the farmer is going to get. So they're going to get certification, and just look at the prices on the shelf, and that's going to tell you what the impact is.
It seems like you're missing a third adjective.
Go for it.
Organic, fair trade, something. I don't know what it is. It's connected to your last comment.
Well,
The way you're working your supply chain, the other two aren't enough, and there's some part of your brand that needs to include that sort of thing. I don't know what it is.
it's sort of interesting, because we see organic and fair trade as, okay, this is the environmental impact, this is the economic impact. And those just happen to be third-party certifications that we believe are available to help build consumers' confidence. So it's not just us saying we're doing this minimum thing, it's a certification. From a brand standpoint, there's a much, much broader, sort of a more brave position that we're taking that over the next few years we'll be demonstrating, hopefully, or in a way that people can see it. And what it comes down to is respect that all living things on the planet are interconnected. I need the consumers to be healthy and well. If you guys are doing great and buying chocolate, I'm better. I need my employees to be thriving, because if they're happy and productive, I'm doing better. If the farmers are. So I need all of the life on the planet to be doing well in order for me to do well. And that's kind of this exchange that we have with each other all day long, every day. And how that actually is communicated from a brand standpoint. You know what? If you have any ideas, give me a call. But common sense, right? Isn't this? Okay, other questions?
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment. I'm just curious, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, yes.
Okay. I mean, you said that the demand would go up if all of a sudden we decided that, hey, we want everybody to have, the demand would go down, the price would go up for chocolate if everybody went fair trade. But in some ways, my question is, why would that be so bad of an issue, right? I mean, consumers here, we probably eat too much chocolate on the whole. And so to a certain extent, if we can make our lives better by eating less chocolate, we can make their lives better by
Yes,
providing
I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's, the thing is, the point that about cocoa beans are seeds that are actually really good for you. They lower your blood pressure, they make you feel happy. There's this chemical in our brain when you eat chocolate, these chemicals come together that make you feel like you're in love. And, it's true, this is scientific. And the irony is that when those same three chemicals come together, like when you're infatuated, it actually inhibits your brain ability to think logically. Which, for a long time, was sort of what my love life problems were. But the cocoa beans are really healthy. It's the sugar and all the other stuff that goes into it there that's not healthy. That's the problem. And I don't think that it's a bad thing for us to consume less chocolate. I would rather see everybody eat higher percentage cocoa content chocolate, because you may not change the demand of cocoa beans if you consumed more dark chocolate, and eat less of it. That's fine. I'm happy with that.
I guess I'd say that too, not in regards to only chocolate, but to many of the agricultural products and food products that we consume on a regular basis.
If we live a healthy life where we respect and care for our bodies, I think the consumer impact of that would change substantially the food industry, wholesale. Yes?
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on this question, we talked about economic and social impacts. Have you seen more of a demand for sort of the increase of environmental programs through government or other enabling environment, like sustainable ecosystem services? Are those at all coupled or interlinked with the ability to generate more value for local communities? Are you finding partnerships with nonprofits or conservation organizations that are utilizing that extra money to conserve resources?
Am I seeing the impact at origin of these government programs or partnerships? Oh, yes. There is a clear understanding, more so today than I've ever seen before over 20 years in this space, of the fact that conservation and economic development are becoming much more linked. And that's it's not just conservation, put a fence around it, don't let anybody in or out. And it's not just, okay, well, let's develop economic development at any environmental cost. They're actually syncing up. And so Conservation International is, they were just, they've been involved in that sort of philosophy for a long time. Nature Conservancy just came to see us about a project in Papua New Guinea that is an economic driver for sustainability. So the answer is yes. Yes.
How do you see, I thought it was pretty amazing that when I was in Washington, D.C., I could buy Theo chocolate.
Yes.
Right? So, and
Did
how
you?
do you see, I did.
Thank you.
I even actually sent one back to Seattle.
Thank
for
you.
your cousin. But how do you see, you've seen a lot of cool local grow that.
So is your question getting into mass distribution, is that helping?
Yeah, like, I mean, because it's no longer just Theo chocolates in Seattle. You are now a national
We're national,
brand.
yes.
And
Right.
people across the country can
Right.
recognize
That-
your product. And
Yes, that's a good thing.
Yes.
Right. And
growing those businesses.
it's, what's interesting about this, and there is this question, when the deeper you get into the machine and the larger the volume, the more downward pressure there is on price. And so for us, maintaining that economic integrity is core to our business, and it's challenges that we face regularly. And I'm gonna, if you guys want, I can show you some competitors' information. Okay. And so it's, yeah, I would love to be able to build our business, expand our business model so it has integrity. But more importantly than being the largest chocolate company, I want to create a business that's a model that other people look to and say, hey, I want to do that. Those guys made money, they did it the right way, and they're a good household brand. Doesn't have to be the biggest company, doesn't have to, that's not size, it's more about having that impact. Because there's, we can help a lot of farmers. We can do good work and we can do good. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But I think we do even more when we inspire other people and other businesses to have deep integrity. And we're still learning. I mean, I'm not saying that I've got the way, come follow me. I'm still sorting it out in a lot of ways.
And I still think that for any company that's trying to operate like the way that you are, you're going to have more expense in this chocolate bar than the guy that's cutting
Right.
the corners and everything. So it all still comes back to, whether it's in your product, my product, or anybody else's, the paradigm shift that has to take place in the minds of the consumer.
Yes, absolutely.
That's
Hands
the
down.
foundation there.
Hands down. Was there another question? Yeah.
Well, I went to your tagline from bean to bar.
Yes.
But it wasn't, and I took the tour yesterday, but it wasn't until I heard you speak today that I thought that's actually, for you, more unique than the fair trade or the organic. I mean, that speaks to your integrity of your supply chain.
Right.
And I'm wondering, even as we want to support you by getting the word out there and making it viral, I mean, is that how you want your company described, that from bean to bar?
I think that's a differentiator, right? I mean, we want to be described as this chocolate is amazing, and you know what? I think they're trying hard to do the right thing. That's what I want. Yes.
So my question would be then, what do you think is kind of the biggest obstacle at this point? Is it the consumer paradigm? Is it brand recognition? Do the consumers still want the Nestle and the Hershey because it's familiar, or is it like the actual taste that we're used to?
Well, you know what? I think there's. Let me just. Are we out of time?
Yeah, we have like 5 more minutes, so maybe.
Let me just do some competitor stuff real quick, because and it's interesting. Until we got into this conversation, I wasn't planning on showing this part of because it's kind of crass, frankly. But anyway. So let's see. This is the first time this farmer's ever had chocolate. He's been growing cocoa for 30 years. That's true in most cases. Yeah. And that's a fig fennel bar that he has. We have hardware because we've won prizes. We have people who like our product. Okay, so here's what's interesting. Who makes chocolate? This is from bean to bar. So Equal Exchange, and I really like Equal Exchange a lot. I think they're one of the best companies out there. Green and Blacks is now owned by Kraft. Dagoba is owned by Hershey's. There's Divine. But none of those actually make chocolate. Yes? Okay. So then, so that's one sort of, who's certified organic? Now again, that may or may not be important to you. But there's the ones up there, you can see who's certified organic, and that's great. They buy chocolate from the larger companies who make it, and they put it into either they buy a finished bar and then resell it, or they take the chocolate, melt it down, and put it into a mold and then sell it, and then wrap it. But they're not starting from beans. So when I was explaining to you this whole thing around how many people are in the middle, I mean, even companies who really, I think, do good work still have all of these margins in the middle. And And so in some ways, I understand that the margins are there. They're engaging companies who provide a service that they need to make a product. And that's fine, but it does limit what you can do at the other end. So we're trying to extract some of that and take that margin and shift it back to our raw material supply. You can see who's fair trade in this. I have some fair trade ingredients. Is their factory certified, and have they won any prizes? But that's why I wanted to kind of roll through that. But the thing that's interesting to me about that is that these are our competitors. We're not competing with other companies who do what we do. They're not taking the capital risk that we've taken. They don't have the model that we have, but we compete with them and the competition, and I'm not going to go back to those slides, but most of the competition now is based on low prices. So they're on deal all the time, trying to push the price down. And this is what we're running into in the conventional market, and we're not. And we're now, from same store turns, we're actually number 3 nationally in the same store turns. And that's a 98% year-over-year growth, and we have not gone on deal as much. And so that, to me, is more of a success than anything else, because if we're only selling on price, we're going to lose and the farmers are going to lose. I think we have time for one more question. Do we? Yes? Yes. We have. So one of the questions, can you process at origin? And so fundamentally, you have to make a product that people want to buy, which means it has to be really delicious. So we control the process here so that we can do that. We're not a large company, but now we're large enough in size that we're actually starting to consider having value add, because I love that model. And so we just had our chocolate maker come back from Panama and Costa Rica, working with a chocolate maker down there to develop a roast. And all the technology development we do, from fermentation, drying, and cultivation at the farm side to this, is all free, open technology. Cocoa practices I told you about, for the cocoa standards, open technology. Anybody can have it. So when we provide roasting and grinding expertise to the small processors down there, that's for them to use. And if they can make a better product that has more value that they can sell to our competitors, mazel tov, that's great. So we think it's a great model, we support it, and it's something that, as we grow, more and more of our raw materials will be converted at origin. It does. It creates more jobs. It doesn't change the farmer. It doesn't change what the farmer earns, but you're creating jobs in that country, keeping some of the money down there and actually reducing scrap for shipping. So there's an economic advantage to us. We do. We establish a contract with the farmer, but we do have a company that finances cocoa for us, so they'll do the contract. So we sign off on the contract. They finance it, they send the money to the farmer, and then they sell the beans back to us. But it's fully transparent. We do, no, what we do is we'll buy a certain, we don't hedge, but we will set long-term contracts, in a sense, based on volume. So in Ecuador, we'll buy 120 tons at a shot with specific delivery dates. It does, right. And it gives us security too, yeah. Right. Right. That's correct. Okay. Is there anything? Are we done? Oh, hold on. Let's see. So this. This is. You know what I'm going to do? Let me just tell you real quick about the Congo. So. I was asked to go over to the DRC last fall by actually a Seattle organization, ECI, Eastern Congo Initiative, and just to go over and see if there's any potential to use cocoa as a development crop. And what I saw was poverty like I've never experienced, security issues like I've never experienced. I mean, really one of the most challenging places I've ever been. And at the same time, tremendous potential, because there we could increase people's income 10, 20-fold in some cases. And they're producing cocoa. And so we're focusing more and more on regions where our impact is really game-changing in that sense. And so I'm excited about that, and stay tuned. I'm hoping that we'll be able to export some cocoa from there in the next few months. And we're doing something similar in Tanzania. These farmers, this is a training session on fermentation that we were doing. And these producers here, at the time, were earning $435 a year on average for cocoa. And they now, I was just back there in December, and their target is to increase their income seven times, and we know that we can help them do that. So imagine what it's like to wake up and say, you know what? If I put in that fermentation box, if I start cultivating in this way, I can increase my income 7 times. I mean, how often do we get a chance to do that? So so what we're doing in East Africa right now is near and dear to my heart because I think it would be a good thing. That's all I got. Thank you. Yeah, sure, go for it.
And I'm sorry I've taken so much time with this, but we talked about the need being, starting with the fruit being the shift in the consumer's mindset. And I think part of that is actually to get consumers to take on this idea of consuming less. Let's use chocolate bars for example. The consumers, we all get a paycheck and have X number of dollars to do with, right? And so we're in this mode where we want, I want this, I want this, I want this. That drives our thinking to, I gotta get the best price for everything because I only have X number of dollars to pull.
Right.
So using the chocolate bar as an example, if I had this chocolate thing and I gotta have chocolate, you can decide to spend more on the ethically produced product and consume less.
Right.
Or you spend more and consume more, but the problem is it's kind of like if you get to charge more for your product and you make a larger profit, you only have to sell one bar to make the same amount of money that maybe under this other system with all the cuts, and you have to sell 3 bars.
Right.
So you just end up being real busy to make the same money
Right.
that you can make selling fewer bars
Yes.
at a better profit.
Yes.
And everybody benefits.
That's it. Right. Thank you. I have real quick, and thank you for your comments. It's if anybody has any ideas or anything you'd like to share with me outside of this around how we can better educate consumers and maybe channel some development money to consumer education, and you feel like putting on your marketing hat or your ad hat or your sales hat, email me, and I would love to engage with you on that. The other thing is that there's a lot of chocolate bars up here, and I really don't want to carry any away, so if you can just come and take some, I would love it. Thank you guys very much.